Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. A game to seek to find a way to leave a world behind. Still having that tagline within this film, because they're trying to stay on brand, but then again, man, is this brand changed. It has gotten more plain, and throughout the film is to have a number of things that has gone on to have been just done to death, or uh, have a lot of what was prior done to Jumanji not to be expanded upon or bettered here. But at least this movie is to be entertaining. This movie is to kind of like go into being a video game genre film, but I don't think it goes into that enough. Like we have like NPCs that they go on and kind of rotate certain things of dialogue, but I really don't think that they do the video game theme enough in this film. Like, obviously there should have been at one point where like someone is to open up a backpack and there should have been like an inventory list off to the side somewhere, or there should have been like some kind of like putting your hand behind you and then a item appears and then you're like, oh hey, yeah, this was in my backpack. But then we also have like the touching of the heart thing, and then the strengths and weaknesses appear. How would you go on and to have like figured that out? We don't have enough rhyming and poemish things like we did in the other Jumanji, but again, we don't really have much of the visual stuff from the very first movie tying into this one either, because it seems to like say it's a sequel, but then again, it feels so disconnected. So disconnected. From it going from a board game to a video game console. And the video game console is to not have been a real thing. They just kind of fabricated it for this movie. But anyways, let's go on and get some like stuff that I need to get out. So I feel that I might have forgotten some things when I was to have talked about the original Jumanji. First off, the what year is it meme. I don't feel I ever stated that. So there was a meme that still is to go on to this day where there is to just be a massive number of reboots of movies, and we have Robin Williams popping in and be like, hey, what year is it? That meme has just consistently just existed, and we don't have that same like draw or that same approach within this movie. They should have really gone with that meme, but they didn't. It seems also like from the original movie, like Robin Williams was stuck in Jumanji for 26 years. Then the animated series had Alan lost in the game for 23 years, and a Jonas brother is to be stuck in the game for 20 years. So, like, man, we're really just like stating that a lot of these characters are just going on and just having less and less time within Jumanji. Because if they were to probably stay in the game anymore, they'd probably actually legitimately die. I don't know. I guess they want to try to figure out how they can go on and just kind of get younger characters to somehow exit the game, I guess. But so, here's where I feel I need to go on and start to do some comparisons. So, the original Jumanji movie, I would probably don't know if I ever compared it to anything, but I'd have to have compared it to like Uncanny Annie, as well as also there's a number of death game stuff that I'd gone on and hoped to have a playlist for, that you can go on and probably may find a connection within a number of those things. But then, so this movie here, I would probably have to easily compare it to a number of just video game like movies. Like, bizarrely, what came to mind to me was the Super Mario Brothers film, the original one. Because if you look at the early Super Mario video games and then you look at the movie, it feels like going from Jumanji to Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. Because there were certain specific visuals that were in the original video games that they decided to not do whatsoever, really, in the original Super Mario Brothers movie. But so, the final girl also brings to mind because there are a group of kids all sucked into a movie, and they have to go on to play out this horror movie and figure out who is going to be the final girl by the end of that tale. And like, the movie is probably not all that great, but like, I reviewed it at some point. It exists on the channel. You can check it out if you'd like to. But also there's some like flashback stuff that also was to have reminded me of the flashback thing that they go into this movie with. So that's my comparison. But then also stuff like Stay Alive. If you die in the game, you die for real. That is to be the tagline of that movie. There's probably a whole video game playlist. Darwin's Game, and also Darwin's Game, and God, what was the other one? Sword Art Online. I would check out the very first season, because the second season gets into like fairies and stuff, and it just really gets off the rails, and it's not as good a quality as the first season. But anyways, that's, I feel, most of the comparisons. More than likely, if something just kind of comes up in my brain, I'll bring it up. But I've taken a lot of time of all that. So let's get into how I felt about this movie, what I have to go on and just kind of state about kind of what happens in this. So, firstly, we just get a lot of CGI animals in this. Man, I couldn't have waited to just seen an elephant, a rhinoceros, a jaguar. Ooh, yeah. Like, man, we've really come a long way with CGI, just really in this movie not sticking out like a sore thumb, like a scorpion slash Dwayne The Rock Johnson from the Mummy movie, where that just like didn't look realistic whatsoever. And so now we're going into CGI'd animals that just kind of stick out within this film. This movie was done seemingly years ago, and it's not good CGI. Come on. So, also, like, beyond like the animated series doing a way better approach of the Jumanji world than this movie does, because just generic animals. And then also we have that motorcycle gang that, like, I don't understand why that existed. And also, like, where do they get their gasoline for these motorcycles? Like, in this jungle that seems to be in the middle of nowhere. Where do you get the helicopter fuel? Who knows? It's a video game. You gotta suspend so much disbelief. It's ridiculous. And then you get the Van Pelt. The Van Pelt in this movie. Like, if anything, the actual players look more like Van Pelt than Van Pelt does. I get it that this could probably be a different Van Pelt and whatever, but man, like, I guess Van Pelt has something about animals with him. He's another zoologist. Uh, but really, like, this Van Pelt just, like, he looked not at all visually pleasing. But then also, like, he's not in this movie, I feel, enough. Like, there's so many other things going on. Like, a lot of the characters are just kind of, like, running around to the point of them, like, offing themselves rather than seeing any one of really Van Pelt's goons or Van Pelt himself as a real threat. They're just going on and, like, thinking that game is going to trick them at some point and be more scared about that. How we perfectly go on and have these characters with 3 lives by the beginning of this movie, and I'm like, well, how is it going to be perfectly uh, timed whereby the end of this movie, most of these characters only have 1 life to live? As if I'm going to rename the soap opera. Everybody gets one. But so, I feel that the girl characters were probably the best thing about this movie, even when Jack Black was to at some point be Bethany. Because Bethany eventually becomes a much more well-rounded person, other than her just being glued to her Instagram or her friend Lucinda. Uh, but then eventually comes to find that, like, she wants to be much more of an adventurer, and she goes to be with all of these uh, people and actually becomes friends with all of them. And Ruby Roundhouse is just kind of fun because this character has this kind of gimmick going on in this movie, and I can enjoy her for that. And plus, also, like, I like the actor who is to go on and play Ruby Roundhouse. Um, for how supposedly awkward the character was, but then, like, the character needed to find its confidence, and I could go on and just like that character for that. And plus, also, she looked hot. So, and they consistently had to go on and, like, bring up her looks also, like how they consistently had to bring up how she's like, oh, like, this is what I'm wearing. Oh my god, I'm showing too much skin. Like, consistently, like, that seems to be the only thing that character had to keep bringing up. Like, why not go into the bazaar town and just buy some freaking uh different set of clothing? But then again, you're losing, I guess, the appeal of whatever this movie is to be by only having one female character, so that one female character has to go on and legitimately have to have, like, the skimpiest clothing on. Just has to be that way. Plus, also, like, it's really that character or that actor kind of breaking away from Nebula and doing something really as much as possible drastically different. So, like, good for her. But anyways, this is another Dwayne the Rock Johnson movie, and that's, I think, the big suffering point. Is, like, Dwayne the Rock Johnson has to be the bestest ever. He can't have a single weakness. And also, he really has to be a character that has to carry the film and do all the cool stuff where everyone else is to uh just to figure out how they can put their best foot forward in this film and kind of have their moments. But again, like, Dwayne's obviously carrying this thing, uh, metaphorically and literally. Uh, But anyways, so that I feel is like all that I possibly wanted to get out. There might be a number of things that I might say that I kind of forgotten about. Um, yeah. Uh, Other than that, I think it's about that time to just go into just kind of teeing up this movie quickly and then go into full on spoilers so I can hope that like this review doesn't take too ridiculously long because I've been going way over on a lot of these reviews because there's so much stuff to unpack when we get to the movie part that I feel so much so forced to want to figure out ways to uh cut the me talking about the movie part just so that way it doesn't consistently go over, or slim down that part just so I can like rationally not have a lot of people feel that they're getting slighted when they're going into like my reviews and just like, oh, this is clickbait. I'm like, what's clickbait about it? They don't answer, so I'm like, okay, all right, well, sorry. But anyway, like I'm reviewing the film, like, but I guess they don't get it. They must have assumed that like full movie or something would have been said somewhere, but it doesn't. So they must not have understood whatever I was to be putting forth in a video. But I don't. It is what it is. Or the videos are too long. I get it. But it's never gonna change. Uh, unless I either finally break down or just reach a point where movies are just so bad that I just want to go on and figure out a way to just put a video out, but then do it in the quickest manner possible. Um, or I forget just a lot of stuff going on in a movie or show. But anyways, I'm rambling. I'm sorry. So the grading of this movie, where can you go on and find the film? And then let's get into full on spoilers. So the grading of this movie, the movie's entertaining. There's a lot of problems with it. There's like going through this movie, if I were to have gone on and listed the problems that I had while watching the movie, it probably would have been a lot better off. Uh if I could have actually just done commentary on this film and just be like, yeah, that part sucked. Yeah, that part was good. That's like if I would have just really just micromanage this movie, it probably would have been a lot better for me. But this movie, I feel, is so in between okay and bad that I feel that we almost have to break the grading system because of it. Like, normally I would go on and just be oakley dokley, but I don't even think that this movie deserves that. Like, I feel that we need to go on and say that this movie is fine. This movie's fine. It's entertaining. There's certain characters that I like about it, but, like, having to compare this to a lot of other video game movies, like, man, like, just this is to be a movie that doesn't feel like a movie that came out the year it did. Like, this movie feels like a movie that came out like decades ago or a decade ago or something. Like, it doesn't feel like it's 2000 and something kind of film whatsoever. Um, but then again, like, anyways, so let's go on and kind of, if I haven't got it, so let's get into the full on um like teeing up of this so I can kind of get this. So we have all these kids, one reason after another, going into this detention. They all go on to go into this kind of future computer lab like room, and they stumble upon this video game console. They all decide to go out of their way to all play this game, and they all get sucked within it. one by one they start to realize who everyone is, and they take far too freaking long to do so. As well as also there's certain like scenes that are kind of taking far too long within this movie, like the beat 'em up scene between Kevin Hart and Dwayne the Rock Johnson. But so our characters all end up in this jungle, and they end up getting killed or find their weaknesses, and some of them are done, or really probably just one is really done in a funny manner. But then all the rest are just like, oh, okay, all right. Like, that I guess could just be an interesting way to just have gotten killed off in a game. But, like, I didn't find this movie all that funny, really. Uh, like, I think it was just a lot of dry comedy, I guess, that was so dry that I was like, meh, like, I couldn't have bothered to just even gotten a chuckle out. Um, but so we'd have our characters running around, eventually ending with Nigel. That is to give them a flashback and like help them kind of know where their uh, what their real end goal is. So our characters are figuring out this game and are realizing that they are to have a map, and so they're like, well, okay, like Nigel had gone on to tell us to go to this one location. Come to find out, the location is to lead them to another riddle, another clue, another thing to do. And so they go from that, and then they turn around and have another clue. They have another object. So like a lot of side missions here, a lot of just running around, and eventually that turns into them having a extra player within uh, this team, which is to benefit them. But then again, like a lot of the skills that I think a lot of these characters have, besides Dwayne, like really in my mind, like they have to be useful. But then again, like especially what like Kevin Hart's specialty is, like it really doesn't exactly like feel that like Kevin uses his abilities to his best advantage. It really doesn't. Um, there could have been a number of ways they could have taken that one skill and really like really showcased it well, but they couldn't have been bothered. But so all of this leads back to this Jaguar shrine and getting this jewel back in place, and then doing the call out the Jumanji. So yeah, so really nowhere near as like suspense driven I feel as the first one was. And no little things within it that are to really be um as interesting to watch as what this was. So this movie's fine. I'm gonna unwind and go into spoiler time, because I think it's about that time to go into pausing this video, getting out my cast list and possible things that I can figure out how to break down this movie with. Let me know in the comments below if you were to have just liked the original Jumanji movie, maybe you were to have gone on and had a real, much more better experience with this movie than you did the original. Maybe this one's your favorite compared to the board game movie. That's completely fine. Uh, some people may go on and are to talk about other video game movies that were to be their favorites. My favorite movie of all time is Ready Player One, and I know it's not the same as the book, but hey, like that's my favorite movie of all time. Still, there hasn't been a movie that has just been a kitchen sink of a ton of pop culture-ish like stuff that is to just topple that film. So with that said, it's spoiler time. It's spoiler time. It's about that time you get to spoil this movie. Let me pause this video. Let me get all my stuff. We'll break this movie down. All right. So one thing that I also want to state is Jack Black does have a YouTube channel. I believe it's called Jablinski Games or whatever. But within that YouTube channel, there are to be little like behind the scenes videos of him going on and doing things with his stunt double from these films. But then also, there's a little bit at some point, some like behind the scenes stuff that he shows from that film. Whether it's like him kind of talking to like certain cast members, or also just kind of doing certain things with cast members from that, I believe. But let's go on and let's break down the very beginning of this film. So the very beginning of it is to be done in 1996. So we would have the very first person to have found the Jumanji board game, and he is to have gone on and opened up the board game at home after taking it from out of this beach, and he looks at it and he's like, a board game? Like, nobody plays with board games anymore, and so he shuts it. So because of that complaint, we would then just have the game turn around and start to make these drumming sounds. And so the guy opens up the board game again to come to find that the board game had turned into this gaming cartridge because this guy is a gamer. So the guy, who I believe is Alex, ends up putting this game in the cartridge, and he ends up getting sucked inside of the game. So 20 years later, so Spencer is playing a video game, and he's getting a text from Fridge, like stating like, hey man, you got it? Spencer's like, yeah, I got it. So Spencer is finishing up this paperwork for an essay for Fridge, and it's about the Western expansion, and Spencer is just kind of finishing it up, and it's to talk to his mother, and he then is to supposedly head to the Freak House, which I guess is to be very similar to the Parish House, when the Parish House had gotten like abandoned, and eventually at some point like Kirsten Dunst and or Peter and Judy or whatever go on to live at that house. But like that's not who at all eventually goes into that. So anyways, I'm kind of stating things that aren't like, oh wait, we getting the same people? No, that doesn't happen in this movie. So an understanding of like we had the Vreeks who are to live at this home. Old man Vreek. So Spencer and Fridge are at this freak house, and they exchange the paperwork, and Spencer's asking Fridge like, well, hey man, like if you're not busy this weekend, you wanna come to my place? And Fridge's like, well, yeah, about that, no, kind of thing. So figuring out a way just out of it. So Then transition to Bethany. Bethany's going on to be doing a test, a quiz, or whatever. And she's in class and she's openly just talking to Lucinda. And the teacher stops uh, Bethany by just having Lucinda like looking through the lens or looking through the camera screen and whatever, and just be like, hey, like you have a rando kind of looking at you, and it ends up being her teacher. So the teacher, who's I think just called teacher here, they didn't come up with any real name, uh, ends up giving Bethany crap about like, well, hey, like you're answering a phone like right within class, like you're probably distracting everybody because you yourself are like so like selfish that like you're stating that you're having a rough time and you're going through some things, and that like if your teacher was a real true woman or whatever, like she would much more so understand and whatever, like all this and that rigmarole. So the teacher is to go on and want to discipline Bethany for ruining or distracting a number of students while they're taking a test. So detention. Bethany was to have also like done this Instagram or Insta photo, and she probably had to go on it and do a lot of work just for this one photo. It's starting to get that way when I'm starting to have to like redo a lot of thumbnails and realizing how much like real work that all entails, because I think all the other images were just so easily chucked together. But now I'm really taking the time and figuring out like what looks a lot more like cosmetically pleasing, or like how can I look more like the character. And so yeah, so like that's really taking a lot out of me to just kind of put all these pieces together, or just randomly think of just some little scenario that like, oh yeah, this can make me look more like so and so character. Oh yeah, let's have this as a just photo as a keepsake, um for me to use on this thumbnail or this thing. So yeah, so like my mind is consistently turning on this like random stuff that I don't even know is going to be a legitimate thing that I'm going to use later on, but it's still like just a really interesting idea that, yeah, does distract me a lot, like me talking about it now. So, but it's there at least. I'm trying to be creative as I can. But so Bethany goes on to take this photo in his dimension. It's like, oh, I just woke up. Yeah, I'm sure the opened up shirt and the the made coffee and the number of other things that are just kind of around her were just like lying there, right? So probably a lot of probably fake posts, probably, but anyways. So we passed the whole Bethany in class doing her test thing, being very like self-absorbed, and it's like, well, yeah, you know that other people around you, right? Like you know that you're just not the like the whole center of the world, that there are other people that exist, right? But so now going into this gym class where Spencer is going and just kind of taking laps, and Coach Webb is very upset uh, with Martha for not joining in on on gym activities, and Martha is just like, no, I don't really want to. I don't want to do the gym. And in all honesty, I feel like at least when I was in high school or whatever, like gym class was like the easiest thing to do. Like this person doesn't want to go on and do the easiest class. Uh Even though I guess like physical activity, like it's not always easy for everybody, but still. So later on we find Spencer telling Martha, it's like, well, yeah, like, when you were talking to the teacher in gym class, like, I really thought everything that you were saying there was, like, right on. Just figuring out a way for Spencer to just get some brownie points with this girl, but it seems that, like, the two of them were just somehow, like, uh, really, like, having some chemistry there, it seems. But then, like, I don't know how much really good chemistry that both Dwayne and Karen really had. Like, I don't know, it kind of felt more like it kind of really felt very awkward when the two of them were to just like beyond the weird whatever that kissing thing was. But then like just like the awkwardness of like, oh, okay, yeah, like we really have to go on and do these kind of more like scenes, and it's just ugh. But anyways, again, getting a little ahead of myself. So so Spencer and Fridge end up getting called into the principal's office, and Principal Bentley and this teacher are examining this paper, this essay, and the essay, I guess, is to somehow just be very familiar to this teacher. It's like, well, yeah, like Spencer, you used the way of ending this paper on another paper as well as like a number of other papers. You ended it the exact same way. So it seems that Spencer was trying to take the rap, that he was trying to say that Spencer made Fridge make him do his homework. So the aftermath of what happens is that like Fridge gets kicked off the football team, and also like Spencer like was to almost be very much worried about getting like expelled or expended or suspended or whatever. So both of them are kind of arguing about that. How like, man, like how is it that like you couldn't have gone and done a better paper? It's like, why should I have had to? Like, I'm doing someone else's work, I'm not doing my own. But so that leads to a disagreement between the two people that should actually be friends, but they're really not. So all these kids end up in detention, and so Principal Bentley comes to them and is to tell them, it's like, you know what, like right now should be like a defining moment for you to know who you are and know who you're going to be. And like detention really is just like best suited for really reflection. So Principal Bentley takes all four of these kids to make their way to this future computer lab room. And he's like, well, yeah, like we have all these computers stored in here because at some point this will just be a computer lab. So he brings them to these magazines and he tells them like, well, yeah, I want you all to take these uh, staplers from out of these magazines. So here is this these gadgets to go on and do so. So it seems that at first that Martha is the only one really pitching in here, and Martha looks at Bethany. It's like, you're really not going to go on and do any of this, are you? And Bethany's like, I don't think I really should, and whatever. So because Bethany's not doing it, all of a sudden Spencer and Fridge come up with a way to not do this, and so they realize instead that they had spotted this console, because we have to assume that the prior family who had lost their kid had just gone on to like pawn off this console, and none of the people that had gone on to obtain these console had gotten sucked in the game also. So like, yeah, so eventually it just came down to these detention kids. So at first it seems that just Spencer and Fridge are just kind of thumbing through this game, and it's like, well, hey, Bethany, you want to get involved? And Bethany's like, oh yeah, sure. Like I guess I have nothing better to do, because she really didn't want to go on and do this game. But what else can she really get involved in? So every single one of the people just kind of ditch what they were doing to just jump into this game, and then they literally jump into the game. As we, of course, get the whole tagline of a game to seek to find a way to leave a world behind. And they then go on to like the Jumanji, press start. So they have all these characters, selections of all these goofy-ish characters that would be like Smolder, Bravestone, and Professor Shelley, uh, Oberon, and Franklin Mouse, but they thought it was Moose, Finbar, and Ruby Roundhouse, and I think there was also to have been another Seaplane McDonough. Yeah, McDonough, who ends up being Nick Jonas's character in this film, and then eventually, when they reveal who actually Nick Jonas's character actually is, it ends up having him just being, I think, Alex. So they all get sucked into the game, and one by one they start falling from the sky and plopping in to this jungle. And this honestly kind of reminded me of the Predators movie, where all these people were falling from the sky and they were like parachuted into this jungle. It had Topher Grace in it and it had Lawrence Fishburne in it. But yeah, like it felt just quasi somewhat similar to that whole scenario. But so, anyways, they all start to drop in, and Spencer at first is realized like, oh my god, I'm bald. Oh my god, I have these muscles and this and that. So everybody starts to drop down, and they start to figure out one by one who they actually are. How Fridge realizes that he's much shorter now and doesn't know who anybody is, and is starting to eventually ask people who they are. And everybody's questioning why they have these unusual voices and sound different, whatever. So also looking at Ruby and like, god dang, Ruby, all right, woo. But so the most heartbroken one out of probably everybody is Bethany, who when she goes into the water and looks at herself like, oh my god, I'm an old man. Oh, it's so bad. So everybody is going on and just being so either horrified about who they had gotten or are to just be like amazed. Uh, and so they're all figuring out who is who. And so at one point, uh, we'd have, I'm just going to go on and call everybody by their Spencer, Bethany, Fridge, uh, Martha names, or Ruby Roundhouse. Because I'm not going to go on and call them all like Professor So and So and and Brave Stone and all that. I'm not doing any of that. But so Bethany is the turn of the group and quickly end up getting gobbled up by this hippopotamus. And then she ends up falling from the sky. And so it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's how you die in this film. They also understand early on that every single one of them all have tattoos, and they all have a bar of 3 of tattoos. Much later on, they all figure out that all of those 3 bars are to be how many lives that they have in this game. They start to like figure that out. So this this first part of this also is to have been called From the Deep, is to be this early part of this level, I guess, because Spencer is going on and talking about how uh, this whole this whole thing should be a game, so they should have levels. So at some point when our group is to just kind of make their way further through this jungle, they meet up with Nigel, who is to have this car with him, and everybody goes on into the car. And really, like, besides the whole flashback thing, the only real big takeaway here is Nigel consistently having this rhyming thing, but I'll get to that in a little bit here. So Nigel ends up going on to eventually give, after he has to just kind of introduce himself to a lot of the players over and over and over again, because whenever anybody's to talk, this guy has to just have a certain set of dialogue to go into. But plus, also a lot of the other like players don't matter compared to the Bravestone character. So, because often when anybody is to come up with a question for the NPC just goes on and just like, oh, Bravestone. It's like, so I guess I don't matter then. So Nigel goes on and is giving Spencer a letter, and when he starts the letter, all of a sudden it opens up this flashback. So all this is just to showcase that uh, that Van Pelt is to have gone on with his men to make his way to this jaguar statue, to have taken this jewel from out of it, to have all of a sudden given his eye an unusual color. And so Van Pelt is to seemingly have all of these abilities and darkness and whatever about him. So when Van Pelt had finally gone on to go to sleep for that night, with birds seemingly close by him. Nigel ends up going on and figuring out a way while Van Pelt is sleeping to unleash the grasp of this little jewel to take it with him and run off with it. So at some point we have our characters get this jewel and they go on to like uh put it in Fridge's backpack because they don't want to exactly carry it, and Fridge goes on and loses it, so they have to go on and reobtain it. Like, it's a whole lot of just eating up of time with this jewel. So anyways, we then turn around and 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 so Spencer gives Fridge the jewel because he's the only one with the backpack, but come to find out, like, his skills will go on and help us understand why he has that backpack. So I think that's just kind of interesting. But Nigel also states to the group, it's like, the goal for you, I will cite in verse. Return the jewel and lift the curse. If you wish to leave the game, you must save Jumanji and call out its name. The poem of which that I go on and like to just read out because it's better that way, I feel. But so so they get the backpack and we're having our characters making their way uh through into uh Jumanji here, and all of a sudden I guess the Rock goes on and just kind of has to just continue to touch his body, just like yeah, like, so Spencer touches himself because he just wants to feel his bulging muscles, and he then realizes that he has these strengths and weaknesses, and like the weaknesses for uh for Spencer's character, the weaknesses is none, but the strengths are fearless, climbing, speed, boomerang, and smoldering intensity. You would think also his strength would have actually been strength, but I guess not. So they're like, well, what does smoldering intensity means? And then at some point they'll just like, yeah, I don't know, yeah. And then they'll just like, dang, like, can you do that? Can you keep doing that? Like, is that something you can just figure out how to do? And he's like, no, it's just a coincidence that it just works whenever it wants. So so the next one up is that Ruby is going to go on and figure out her set of things, as of course Fridge is so eager to want to like help her out with that. Like, hey, yeah, I can just kind of touch you right here, and Ruby's like, no, or Martha's like, no. So so Ruby's strength is karate, tai chi, uh what is this last one? Aikido, so hip hop keto, dance fighting, so break dance fighting. Um but then her weakness is venom. So if ever there was a good time to have a Marvel villain come in to this movie, now would be the time. So so then Fridge is to have a strength of zoology, and weapon valet, which is to be like, hey, toss everything into his bag because he just has a seemingly unlimited inventory. But his weaknesses are cake, speed, and strength. And the whole speed thing will really come into play while they're all running at the same time away from motorcycle goons. He's like, why am I running so slow? But it's funny. So lastly, for Bethany's strengths and weaknesses, a lot of her stuff is just garby gook like words that are just way too up in my knowledge of thinking what the heck they are. Um, but one of the strength is just better at map reading than anybody else, so that's her strength. And then the other stuff is just like, okay, whatever that really is. Uh, like I think one of the other things, like I think Ruby states, is like fossils or something, that she specializes in fossils. But I guess her weakness is just endurance. So that all ends up getting played out. So they go on and they look at this map. And so again, uh, from the deep was to have been the first level, but now the next level is to seem to push them on uh, to a place called the Mighty Roar. So they're like, okay, I guess we have to figure out what the Mighty Roar is. But also, Nigel was to tell the group that they need to eventually make their way to the bazaar. And so they're like, well, I guess we have to eventually figure out what the heck the bazaar is. So I feel here's a time to do some adjusting. Uh, so so after that is all done and over with, so the motorcycle gang is to make their way into pushing our characters to a certain point. So this motorcycle gang comes in, and that's when, of course, we'd have Fridge, who's very slow running compared to everybody else. He's so far behind. But then also, here's where Ruby is to become very valuable with her athletics. She goes on to uh, kind of do this almost like Mortal Kombat, like Liu Kang, like kick in the air, and she's like, "Wow, like I guess this is really gonna come in handy." So all the characters go on to continue to just kind of flee away from this motorcycle gang, and they all jump off of this waterfall or fall into this water that's near this waterfall off of this kind of cliff like thing. So we have our characters all coming off of this waterfall and this water, and get back into a cool dry place. But Ruby, it seems, is to have gotten wounded, and so she then falls from the sky and lands right on Fridge. And that was kind of a funny moment between like really just like Fridge breaking breaking Ruby's fall. But so here's where our characters start to realize that they have the three lives. Like for Ruby had gone down to two. So they're like, wait a minute, like there's some life counter thing. There is some life thing that like we have to understand now, like that like we really shouldn't go on and kind of just waste these lives, because if we blow all of our lives, like game over. So, and plus also every single one of the characters need to be alive to get through the game. Hence, when Alex was to be by himself, like he couldn't get further to the game past some point, no matter how hard he tried, because he didn't have enough players to do every task. So after this, our characters journey further into the jungles, and we have Fridge and we have Franklin, and they're arguing. And here's where we have two of our characters just start blowing lives over stupid disagreements. Again, uh, with Fridge stating it's like, well, yeah, like just because I'm not like as tall as I am anymore, and you are this, like muscular, taller guy, like that doesn't mean that uh, that you're any better than me. Like you're still the same guy, uh, inside of it all. So like Franklin and Fridge get into this kind of just matchup, and Fridge is to be like, well, hey man, like I will just like beat the crap out of you, and Franklin's like, well, I'd like to see you try. Or Franklin, um, Fridge and Spencer, and Fridge is like, oh, and so Fridge takes Spencer and uh drops him off this cliff, and so he falls to his death and dies, and he falls, and it's like, okay, all right, so they get into a punching fight, and Fridge punches Spencer, and then and vice versa. But uh, of course, Spencer does a way harder punch. So they start to fight, and so also Fridge at some point dies as well. So they more and more just start to realize that it's like, well, hey man, like we're really blowing all of these lives. Like we really need you. We really just need to stop. So they make their way further into figuring out where the heck the bazaar is. So with being on this map, so when they make it to the bazaar, they come to find that uh, there is food there, and so Spencer's to say to the guys like, well, hey, like we really need to eat now. Like the game is forcing us to tell us that like we need to eat to kind of keep our strength up. So and so uh Spencer's delivering this in a smolder manner, and Fridge is like, stop that crap. So they start getting what they all think is bread, and so they start eating it. And Fridge at some point realizes that it's not bread, it's pound cake. And Fridge is like, wait a minute, like my weakness was cake. What does that mean? And so Fridge is asking Ruby, it's like, well, hey, like, is my face puffing out? Like, does my body look any different? Like, what's going on? Like, am I gonna die? Is it poison? It what? So, quite a bit of time has passed, and Fridge is like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be fine. And then all of a sudden, he explodes, and he falls and smacks. Like that, I think is probably like the funniest moment of this entire movie, really out of everything. Like, I think that is the funniest thing, is him just kind of falling and also just blowing up like he does. So at some point also, we have Bravestone that goes on and is to face off against all of these Van Pelt goons, and he's bizarrely like stating everything that he's gonna go on and do, basically to these villain faces, and he's like, evade, block, counter, strike, this. Like, I guess, like, if you're legitimately going on and playing a video game, like, there's probably oftentimes where, like, you probably have to get into, like, a pattern or rhythm in your own head, and this guy is just kind of blurting this all out. So, but he's going on and just kind of taking everybody out. He's kind of throwing them against the wall, and this just going at them. So, we'd have this little kid from the bazaar that goes and meets with Bravestone. It's like, well, hey, Bravestone, like I'm gonna help you out here. So they follow this kid to this place that is to have this snake within uh this little like container like thing. So there, I believe, also is a little riddle coming from this thing too. Um, what you seek is in the basket. If you're not careful, you'll be in a casket. Trust each other and never blink. The missing piece is not what you think. So, again, this is to be another a thing to solve. I'm looking at the time. I don't know how far we really are in this movie, but I think we're. I don't know. Anyways, it is what it is. If it goes over 2 hours, that would be fine. I kind of figured that this was going to take a long freaking thing, anyways. And thank you all for being here, listening to this, for however long you're to do so. I appreciate it. So, this snake basket. I probably should have said basket. So they go in and like they immediately think, oh yeah, Bravestone would be perfect for this because he has to kind of do all the heavy lifting for everything. And like at first, he does go on and open it, and realizes that the snake is in there, and then he shuts it and is like, well, wait a minute, like the clue said not to blink. Like, who out of everybody is the one that does not blink the best? And Bethany ends up coming in and like, well, yeah, that's obviously me. I'm like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If she goes on to like take a lot of photos of yourself, like you probably shouldn't blink in the photos. So like Bethany not blinking, like yeah, like that actually is a rather like genius way of like putting that all together. So Bethany is to face against the snake basket, and the snake comes out, and there's at a point where like the snake scares her, and so look the or scares Bethany, and goes lunging out to Ruby, and so Spencer ends up grabbing the snake by the top of the neck, right nearest the head, and is trying to control the snake, and so Fridge, being the zoologist, is to figure out, well, hey, we need to defang uh, this snake, and uh, also, like, Fridge was to have had all the knowledge of the hippopotamus. He's like, well, why do I have that skill? It's like, well, you're a zoologist. You know everything about all of these animals, and you're just kind of shoveling out all of these facts, regardless of whether or not that you are to actually have the real knowledge of it yourself. So we'd so they defang the snake. They go into the basket and realize that they find a elephant piece, and they're like, okay, so what does this mean? What does the elephant piece mean? And so the elephant piece, it seems, is to have a clue with that also, that uh, once they are to find the elephant, they have to climb. So they're like, okay, what does that frickin' mean? So we'd again have our characters that are facing off against these goons, and Alex ends up showing up. Alex ends up showing up and taking them to this sewer hole. They go down this sewer hole, and he's like, okay, you guys got to follow me. And so Alex somehow recognizes all of these characters. I don't know how he does, but he just recognizes all of them. Maybe a number of other players had just died in the past that were them, and that's how he recognized them. But he's just kind of been stuck here for 20 years. But so Alex starts going on and talking to these guys, and oh well, every single bit of the stuff that they're going through are all like very much Indiana Jones like traps. Like at one point, like Alex is to tell everybody to just kind of like hang close to the wall as these arrows shoot out, and then he goes on to like tell them to kind of stop at one point as these blades are to come like kind of flying out of this wall to almost stab any number of these characters, but luckily they're just near or close to them but don't actually do any real uh, pain of any kind. And then Alex goes on and is to drop this torch into this hole with all of these crocodiles or alligators within it. And so he takes this little wooden plank like thing and he puts it from one side to this other side for them to walk through. And so each one of them start to walk through. Some of the crocodiles are jumping up and whichever. So each one of them are all to go on and just kind of pass through there. So Alex takes the whole group back to the parish hideout, as I'd like to say, because Alex is to mention that Alan Parrish's name is on this little hideout spot, and uh, and is to go on and like, well, yeah, I've been hiding here for a while, and like I didn't really know about this guy, but I'm just kind of taking his place. So it seems we find out that Alex only has one life to live left, and also he'd had to come up with ways for how to avoid getting a mosquito bite, because it seems that mosquito bites kill this character. He also is to make margaritas. So, like, our guys are just kind of passing off information and figuring out who Alex is, and uh, and getting to just kind of know one another. So Alex is a state that he was to have gotten stuck at a point of getting to this one shed that was to have uh, this helicopter and just all these other just assortment of things. So the guys are just like, well, okay, we have to figure out some way of helping Alex get to this helicopter so we can get out of here and get further into the game and finish it up. And also, like, have Alex realize that they needed the whole entire team there, so it would go on to have them win. But so they'd also go on to ask Alex like how long he's been on the game or he's been in the game, and Alex mentions a couple of months. And it is kind of funny because Alan Parrish had kind of made markers in the animated series of how long he thought that he'd been there for. And like, I guess for like if the video game was to never have like a real life and day or night and day cycle, like 24 hours, as well as also like you've been in an environment for so long and your life is at risk, like your brain could just be like traumatized and otherwise like you are to turn into a dog or cat and have no clue how much time has really passed at some point. So they have at some point to need to break it down to Alex that he's actually been gone for 20 years as they figure out that he was tied to the freak house and tied to that family inside of it. So they all decide to go to uh, this shed or this hangar to get to this helicopter. So they all realize that like the people that are watching over this hangar are to have stood there for far too long, like 3 weeks as far as time is concerned. So the guys are like, dude, we don't have that kind of time. Like, let's figure out a way to distract these people. So immediately they're all thinking the same thing of like, well, hey, like if we have Ruby just kind of like flirt with them, like maybe that would be enough of a distraction to get us in this hangar. And Ruby is like, dude, I don't know how to flirt. Like, I don't know how to do any of that. And Bethany's like, girl. So Bethany is taking uh, Ruby aside and is teaching her like how to do all of these things, which she's not going to be good at when she actually has to do them. Like, of course, that she's not going to be able to be good at it because logically, like, if a car is to like not uh turn on at the right time, we're gonna have Ruby who is to not flirt uh the right way at the specific time. There was also just kind of this heart to heart moment between both Martha and Bethany where like the two of them were to turn together, and like Martha thought that Bethany didn't like her, and uh and that like she was thinking how like self-absorbed uh Bethany was, and Bethany was thinking to Martha, it's like, well, like you never really try in anything, so like you couldn't have even bothered to try to be my friend. Like if anything, like I'm sure you and me could have actually been friends, like you just never tried. So it's like, well, yeah, I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, so we go on to flirt, and so Bethany here is giving so many tips about uh, how Ruby should kind of just put her hair, and how she should kind of like just do this weird goofy thing with her mouth, and uh, and how she should walk. So telling her all of these things, and then letting her loose out in the world. And we even have Spencer who's telling uh, Ruby that she's a badass to give her this confidence boost. And after that, Fridge is telling Spencer, it's like, dude, she's into you. Spencer's like, what? It's like, yeah, like, you go over there and you hit that. I mean, metaphorically hit it, not literally. I'm saying, like, go over there and get some of that. But so, but Spencer and Martha are just so awkward characters that, like, Spencer ends up telling Martha, it's like, well, yeah, I really, really like you. And they kiss one another oddly, but like there isn't really anything that would make it seem that like these people have some kind of like real reasoning for them to be together besides it just being convenient. I think at some point also Bethany and Fridge were a couple, but like that could just kind of be in my mind for whatever reason. I think they end up saying that they like broke up, but again, that might just be just me. Anyways, so I think I completely did not give a rip about the whole peeing scene. So Fridge had to pee, so then uh also uh Bethany had to pee. So they're whipping it out, and Spencer is consistently telling Bethany how to pee, and it's like, oh, make sure you aim, make sure you aim. Yeah, we've heard it. You have to aim. And it's like, oh, you have a little handle. Huh. Yeah. That scene is just go on and just be like the most awkward freaking scene of this entire movie, as well as just consistently having uh just the awkwardness of some of these characters at some point where uh like all the characters that look at how strong or how good looking Spencer is, and Spencer's like kind of just looking around and he's like, don't cry, don't cry. And he's like, I'm probably gonna die from all of these allergies that I have. uh, he's afraid of everything. So Ruby makes her way to these guards, and the guards are just kind of saying this repeated thing over and over. So the other characters are making it to the hangar, the shed, and so finally Ruby just has this music turn on, and she's like, "Oh, do you guys want to dance?" And her dancing means that she's gonna beat their ass, and so she starts just taking them all down, and some of the characters like Fridge and Bethany are so much proud of Ruby. They're like, yeah, you get him, girl. Yeah, like she's so freaking awesome. All right. So like they're like proud of their little Martha for having this like just confidence, but it's all about that she has this ability already to go on and take down these guys. It's uh like already programmed within her. But anyways, she takes them down. So Ruby comes in and they are all just like, "Oh my god, yeah, you did it, yeah!" And Spencer comes in with this awkward trying to figure out a way to like repeat what Bethany just said. So they all make their way to realize that Alex needs to go into the helicopter and fly the helicopter. And Alex is like, dude, I only have one life left. Can we just take the bus and see where that goes? And they're like, no, like, you need to take the helicopter. Like, you're a specialist with it. Like, since you now have all the other people here, like, this is going to work out in your favor. So, Fridge is also very drunk because of the margaritas, as Spencer and Martha had both spit them both out, uh, because it seems Alex's specialty is to have made margaritas, so he just keeps making margaritas. Man, that guy must have just been drunk all the time because he probably just made margaritas all the time. So, they're wanting Alex to fly this helicopter, and so he finally does. They all motivate him to do it, and so he does so. If you're hearing any popping or loud sounds going in the background, it's 4th of July within the States here, and so, yeah, you're probably going to hear fireworks, and more than likely at some point. I'm just trying as best as I can to wrap up this thing, because I know there's probably going to be a billion more freaking fireworks, and because I'm hearing them now, so I want to go on and just apologize if you're just consistently hearing any kind of background popping noises or whatever. It's all fireworks, because people like to take a whole weekend or a whole week to do 4th of July, it seems, where I live. So, anyways, really stating exactly when this is going out. So, yeah, so we have the flying of helicopter, and it seems that all of a sudden, Alex is to realize that the helicopter is broken. That it seems that the controls are very much struggling, and now Spencer has to go kind of hang above this helicopter to adjust it. Then also, uh, come to find out that Fridge is to have lost the jewel, and it falls out of his backpack as he was barfing. So, come to find out, all of these rhinos are to have the jewel around him. So, Spencer makes the sacrifice play. He forces Fridge to fall out of the helicopter, to then have him be stampeded by all these rhinos, just so that way they could grab the jewel. And then when Fridge falls from the sky, Spencer goes on and forces Alex to weirdly take the helicopter and shift it 90 degrees to just kind of go this way, where like this is the top and this is the bottom of the helicopter. So Fridge can come perfectly flying in, and Spencer catches him. And so it's like, well, hey man, like, I'm sorry that you were basically cannon fodder, but like it was the only way for us to just kind of make it past this point. So we'd have our characters get out of this helicopter, and right after that, we have Alex that ends up getting bitten by a mosquito, and he ends up falling over. And we then realize that Alex is going to die, But Bethany's like, no, 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 no. Like, how about we go on and try to figure out a way to revive him, like any of the normal games would go on and do. So Bethany goes on and is to ask the group how to do CPR, and Spencer, it seems, perfectly knows how to do so. So Bethany starts performing CPR on uh, Alex here, and they trade health bar. It seemed that Bethany had 2 bars on her arm, and then she gave up one of her lives to give to Alex so everybody can go home. So, uh, so Alex here is just so grateful that Bethany was to give up a life, and so right after that, that's when uh, Spencer talks to Martha. It's like, you know what, I really, really like you, and uh, and they start bizarrely kissing, and it's very awkward and very weird. So, uh, so now they have to go on to make their way to the Jaguar Shrine. So they make this way to this location where they think that it's this like perfect just walk up like thing, but they realize that it's a trap. Like they realize like there's no way that since this game has to get harder and harder the further we go, there's no way that this thing is just gonna let us just go through this path and just be easy breezy the best quickest way through this and be done with it. No, they're gonna make us do legwork. So we also throughout this film are to have uh, the Van Pelt birds at some point showing up at random parts, just be this scout, and Van Pelt is to have certain guards like fail him, so he is to like have scorpions like bite them and do poison into them to kill them. And so Van Pelt eventually just kind of shows up here and it's like, aha, like I'm gonna use all these animals against you guys, and this and that. But like we'll get to that. So since he realized that all of this is just a trap, at first, uh, Spencer tries to like, well, hey, I'm a climber. How about I finally climb and climb up all these trees and maybe get around this that way? It's like, yeah, good idea. And he ends up finding these animals upon these trees, and he starts like going and dropping from uh, uh, log to log to log upon this tree, or branch upon this tree. My bad. So he smacks onto the ground, ends up getting chewed up by some jaguars, and he ends up falling back from the sky back down to showcase that he died. So like, hey man, what happened? It's like, well, yeah, I guess some jaguars just ate me up. So they're like, well, obviously, like that wasn't the right solution, and so Fringe ends up coming with this defensive strategy that like all of them are kind of gonna go on and do their own like just kind of separate things, and then eventually all lead back. So excuse me. So they all go their separate ways, and this leads Ruby Roundhouse to just start beating up people again, and so this also leads Fridge to find this elephant and is gonna like ride the elephant. It's like, all right, yeah. Oh, we also had the backpack scene where they were forcing Fridge to go into the water, and he's like, "Hey man, I have a backpack. Like, I'm not going to the water." Like that was kind of interesting. I completely forgotten about that. So, uh, what was Bethany and Spencer doing uh, during this whole thing while the others were doing what they were doing? Um, I don't know. Let me pause here for a second. All right. So, how it all breaks down is I needed a moment. Really, all that Bethany does is she's kind of just running for a very long time until a jaguar comes and attacks her, and she goes on to have the jaguar just like not give an f about her and kind of just moves on because Van Pelt is there, is like, all right, like I'm going to use you as a negotiating tool to get this jewel. And Ruby goes on and is to slay a good portion of the Van Pelt gang, but then she ends up getting like rope tied to this one trap and she gets dragged for a while, but then Spencer helps her out with that. Spencer goes on to take this motorcycle and is to use his flamethrower and is to put a circle around uh, the jaguars to just kind of get them tied up. So the rest of the group is to go on to meet all up by Van Pelt, uh, who is holding Bethany hostage here. So Van Pelt is to want the ruby or the jewel, and he's going and giving them a countdown before killing Bethany here. And Spencer is like, "Well, I can't give you the ruby. We don't have it." So, come to find out, uh, Fridge is the one that actually has the jewel, and he's coming off riding an elephant, and he's holding onto the jewel. So the jaguars start attacking the elephant. The elephant is just taking down these jaguars, and while like there is to be just a distraction going on, both Alex and both Bethany are trying to battle Van Pelt here, and now that the jewel is back in play, uh, Martha is telling Spencer here, it's like, well, hey, like you go on and go, because again, we're seeing a elephant, so we have to go on and climb. As well as also, there was an elephant statue that was near that path that was this trap. There was another elephant statue, so it's all about the climb. So, or I guess a just reminder that they should be doing that at some point. So, so Ruby has the jewel, makes her way to this location where she is to get surrounded by all of these snakes, and Van Pelt is looking at Ruby here and is going on and telling her, it's like, well, like I'm gonna get this jewel, game over. And Ruby is like, well, hey, just so you know, my one weakness is venom from these snakes. So she wanted to get bitten. So they bite her. Ruby is falling from the sky. Spencer's going on and driving all the way to the jaguar statue and is having this grappling hook, this rope, and he grapples onto this jaguar shrine, and he swings and perfectly gets the jewel from Ruby as Ruby falls to the ground and is perfectly okay. And so Spencer puts the jewel into the jaguar shrine, and they're just like, well, what do we do now that he's accomplished that? And so they're like, oh yeah, you have to call out its name, you have to call out Jumanji. So everybody at the same time all say Jumanji, and so they all say Jumanji. And then like there seems to be this kind of this clear like wave that just kind of goes from the game. So the whole entire group all get back together, and they're to be met by Nigel, that is to go on and shake their hands and all tell them they are able to leave this game one by one. So that goes on to, excuse me, quickly have our characters just start shaking hands with Nigel so they can leave. Out of everybody, Fridge is the quickest one to be like, hey, get me the heck out of here. Like, take my backpack, this and that. And there honestly is a bit of a hesitation between Spencer and also uh, Martha. Because Spencer is to tell Martha, it's like, well, how about we stay in this game and just look like this forever? And Martha is just like, well, how about we go on and we are like this outside of the game forever? So Martha leaves, and Spencer's like, you know what, I think I want to go home. So Spencer leaves, everybody's back. So all four of our characters are now seemingly changed forever. So uh so Bethany is telling her friend Lucinda that she wants to go backpacking. Lucinda's like, you backpacking? Ugh. So Bethany is to turn to her new friends, both Fridge and Spencer. Is like, well, hey guys, how's it going? And like, what have you guys been up to? Oh well, sucked into a game. Yeah. Uh, so all of them are just kind of joking around about their past, and so now Martha is uh, is there. It's like, hey Spencer, you better make a move there, buddy. So all four of them make their way to find out that the freak house is to have not been like in shambles like it used to. It's this seemingly very much cleaned up house, like people have been living in it for years. So there is to all of a sudden be this car that comes by the house, and someone gets out of it, and I think this is to actually be Tom Hanks's son, Alex. This is to be the older Alex, and he had gone back to his 90s time, and is to kind of um, make his way to what is to be the other group's current time. So he ends up telling them all that. He's end up explaining to them all that. So he then is to start figuring out who all was who. As like, okay, you must be this guy, you must be that guy, and Martha, you must be Ruby Roundhouse. So he has two kids. One of them is named Andy, and I'm not quite sure if that's an Easter egg reference of something or not. Um, but then also he names his other kid Bethany from the person who saved his life. So Alex goes on and just like thanks him and whatever. So really what happens at the very end of this movie is our characters are all to go on and take this gaming console and to have taken that bowling ball from that computer lab and they toss and break the console and they turn around and walk off and they go off onto Welcome in the Jungle, which is to wrap up this movie. I don't think there was any like end credit scene because I went to the very end of the movie and there wasn't anything there that was to give a clue that there was going to be a sequel. But then again, I didn't see if there was any like mid credit scene or whatever because I didn't just assume that there was going to be one. But with that said, I'm going to get the heck out of here so I can actually get a shorter video out this time. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I missed, because I'm sure there probably was a number of things. I'm sure there probably was a lot of good, funny lines that I quickly was just like, let me get to this scene, let me get to this scene, let me break down this one, let me transition here. Uh, yeah, just I really wish that this could have gone on to be a better film. Uh, that I at least could have been much more uh, happier about watching more than once. But who knows? Maybe the sequel movie, the next level thing, could somehow or another be funnier, or could somehow just be another Jumanji movie that I watch. But either way, I think it's about that time to say it's time to get out of here. Thank you for going on and watching these videos. Like lately, I have just been so uh, blessed and so lucky to just pick finally the freaking right projects for everybody. But then also, I'm hoping to within a matter of like days narrowed down what other projects that I've had either from community polls or to already know that there's a lot of projects I still want to cover on this channel that I already have just kind of backlogged and listed to possibly go into future polls, but then also uh, there are a lot of movies and possible shows, but it feels like a lot more movies than shows that I'm keeping very close to the vest right now um, because I will probably have a hankering of them at some point to put them out. So, with that said, I'm going to go on and get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.